What's up, pod pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are checking out Podcasting Business School. This is the show where I teach podcasters how to love their podcast like a hobby and build it like a business. And today we've got a special podcast audit episode with my new pod pal, Summer O'Toole from the HEA Book Club podcast. Summer, welcome to Podcasting Business School. How's it going?
Thank you. It's so funny being on the other side.
I know. Yes, it's we are creating content together. So I'm excited to dive in. It seems like you have a very spirited and fun podcast. I've been looking through your feed a little bit here. I'm like, all right, some of these topics are interesting. They're intriguing to say the least. So first, explain to me what the podcast is. What is HEA? I don't even know what that means. So I'm sure it'll be something hilarious that I can make fun of myself about. I get myself in all kinds of trouble with this sort of thing.
No, you probably wouldn't know it.
Okay, good. I feel better then. So what is HEA? Who should be listening to your show? What's it all about?
Yeah, so I'm a romance author. And me and my best friend have the HEA book club. HEA stands for Happily Ever After. And so that's kind of some of the lingo in the romance novel community. A lot of people think that romances just have to have like a romantic plot, but in order for it to actually be categorized as a romance, it has to have a happily ever after. So people be like, oh, but Romeo and Juliet doesn't have a happy ending, but that's not a romance, it's a tragedy. So that's my fun little tidbit fact there.
The HEA. That makes total sense now. And I get myself in trouble with asking people to decode these things all the time. And now I just do it right up front. I remember I spoke at Podfest and this woman came up and asked a question and it had like another initial thing that stood for something else. And I asked her afterwards and whatever, I forget what it was, but it stood for people that like to have sex with those leather masks on and like have like the zipper on their mouth. And it wasn't like bondage or SN. It was like some other thing.
Yes.
Like code name for it. And I was like, oh, and people in the audience were like laughing at me and stuff. So anyway, so who should really be checking out your show? Who is the ideal listener?
So the ideal listener is going to be anybody who is a fan of romance novels. It's a very ravenous and niche group of readers. It's kind of interesting because romance is one of the top grossing genre. But if you walk into a bookstore, if they have a romance section, it's way like hidden in the back and it's like one or two shelves. So it's kind of like one of those things that people have as like their guilty little secret, but it really is like a very empowering space. A lot of women and like it's mostly women, but it's a really empowering space, especially for indie authors, which I'm independently published, and a really just like great group of people. So anybody who is a big fan of romance, there's book talk, and then there's like spicy book talk, which is kind of like the realm where we exist in. So we typically talk about more like adult romances, and all the different like fun and crazy subgenres that are out there. But it's really for anybody who enjoys reading and writing romance.
Okay. And I love the fact that you are creating a safe space and a community for people that may feel weird going to the bookstore. They feel like they're being looked at weirdly or something like that. And that you're like, hey, this is cool. We can talk about this together. And I'm going to put myself out there and all these thoughts and discussion points. So I think it's really neat. I'm glad that you're doing that. And that's one of the powers of podcasting is we have the ability to create community and create a safe space for all of our weird little intricacies that we find totally normal that the world's like, what's that about? So I think it's totally cool. Now let's dive into some strategy with you. If you and I were sitting down 6 months from right now and everything has really ramped up, it's gone very, very well for you, heading in towards, the first part of 2023, what would that look like? Like, what does success over the next 6 months look like for you if we were able to really get some things going?
Mm-hmm. So two of the main things that I'd like to accomplish in terms of making this podcast a sustainable financial time investment for me would be monetizing right now I'm kind of toying with the idea of buy me a coffee. And we can talk more in detail about like my ideas about that if you'd like. But the other thing is I would really like to use it as a platform to grow my own email list as an author and promote my own books as an author.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a no-brainer. Like email list, your own books, you're building. I think it's super cool that you're an author and you've got, a following of readers, and you're allowing them to go behind the scenes and have these little conversations with you where you're telling stories and getting your input and like the behind the scenes backstage VIP pass to your romance happily ever after world.
Yes.
And so I think that's super neat and very, very smart. Now, monetization wise, I like Buy Me a Coffee better than Patreon because they don't take quite as big of a cut. Last I looked, Patreon was pretty hefty. And then there are things like Apple Podcasts is trying to do subscriptions. That's even worse because they're really taking a big helping of your revenue generated there. So Buy Me a Coffee. Tell me a little bit about your ideas with that because I'm interested there.
Yeah. So in terms of like my bandwidth, I'm kind of at my max, especially recently. On Friday, I sent my newest book to my editor, so I have a bit more breathing room, but I changed up my publishing plans. So I ended up having to write a book in a month, which was obviously a very big, crazy time commitment. So when I had initially booked this audit, I think it was maybe a month and a half ago. And I was like, this is great. I'm going to have a whole month and a half to really improve, dive in, and then I'll meet with Adam and it'll help take me to the next level. And then I was like, just kidding. I'm going to write a book in a month and ignore everything else.
Oh my God.
So Buy Me a Coffee was something that I've only just started implementing. And because I have a PA who does some stuff more for my like author side of things, but I have a very limited budget in terms of the hours I can pay her for. And then in terms of editing, producing the podcast, all of that, I do that all. My co-host is a high school teacher, so she's very busy during the day, very in the background. And she kind of just shows up and reads the books. So Buy Me a Coffee, the way I thought of it was I want to have a way to give people who support the podcast extra incentives without adding more content creation on my plate.
Yeah.
But I also know people love having a voice in that content creation process as well. So I came up with the Battle of the Tropes, where each month I'm going to pick 2 different tropes or subgenres, and people can vote by donating $1 towards whichever one they want to see in the next month.
Nice.
So I thought that would be fun because it's a little competition, add some urgency, but then also we have them becoming part of the content creation process without me being like, I'm going to make a special episode just for you. And then I thought of the membership. So that's like one time if you don't want to, commit to something monthly. And then the other monthly memberships would just be like general support. And then one would be general support and discount codes to other bookish shops. And we've had some bookish business owners come on the podcast and then, have discount codes attached to that membership. And then a tier up would be mostly like early access to my books, early reader copies, any like art I commission, things like that. So it's still new. We haven't had any action on it yet, but I think I've only mentioned it on maybe like 2 or 3 episodes so far. But that was kind of my middle ground of creating a way for people to support the podcast without adding more content creation onto my plate.
Yeah. So I'll dish out just a few thoughts from my own experience with that type of a platform with like a Patreon style. Buy Me a Coffee is basically a very similar platform to Patreon for those that are listening in. I'll just give you some thoughts and experiences from my own experiences. And I know some people that have really done well with this. So one of the tips would be to not have too many options. Mm-hmm. Like you don't want 8 or 10 different things floating around out there because that, especially if they're all kind of between $1 and $20 options, like people are going to kind of get confused about it. So I would challenge you to have 3 to 5. Mm-hmm. And you definitely want that one that's just like, I just want to support the show. Here's $5. And, mm-hmm. or maybe even I would probably put something that's like $20 or $25. That's just like, hey, I would like to just put this out there and, give it to you as a gift. And I had a Patreon with my health podcast. And people do that all the time. They're like, I just want to support the show. Here's $25. Cool. But also keep in mind that access is something that people will pay for. So maybe if you have an author on the show and maybe you have one author a month come in for a small group chat, a fireside chat, and your top level people get to come in and attend that and talk with them and ask questions, that would be fun. That's something that doesn't go on the regular podcast, and that, or maybe what I would do is I would take a little clip, like a 1 minute highlight clip of last month, and jump on our Buy Me a Coffee if you want to join. It's this author. And that way it's cool. It's fun. It's access to you. It's access to that author. And it's not going to take a whole lot extra time. And I think that would be like a higher dollar one. That would be like the $20 plus, the 25, the 40-ish dollars. It depends on how many seats you want. So if you're like, all right, I want to make $500 a month from that one little thing. Let's do 10 seats at $50 a seat, or let's do 50 seats at $10 a seat. You just kind of work the math however you want. And set the financial goal and kind of work backwards from that. And I think that would do really well. I love the idea of the voting thing. I think that's a winner, 100% for sure. Keep that. So if it was me, I would have something that's just straight up, just give me some money, support the show, some sort of access, higher ticket, and then the voting thing, and then maybe one or two things in between. And I think you could do well with it. Now, the real key with this is going to be your call to action and the way you market it. And so when it makes sense, we want to start bringing it up. Maybe have a little something in your intro and outro. Hey, don't forget, voting's getting ready to close. Make sure you get your vote in with your money at blah, blah, blah.com. And I would set up a custom URL that goes right to that one single thing. So they're not seeing all of the options and getting confused. Yeah. So, battleofthetropes.com, and then boom, they go right to that section of your Buy Me a Coffee, if that's possible. If not, I wouldn't stress about it too much, but that would be ideal. And then when you're getting ready if you do the author backstage pass thing, like talk about that for a few episodes, get people fired up about that. So don't just drop it on them once. You gotta have some repetition when it comes to your CTAs and experiment a little bit. Like I've set out little challenges for myself, and it's so hard to not just spill all the beans all at once. Cause I want to, we have that fear of missing out. Like if I don't mention it this time, then what if the ideal customer is right there? But give yourself 4 or 6 episodes in a row where you're like just talking about one thing over and over and over again. Like, hey, got this Battle of the Tropes thing, or got this backstage pass thing, and just get some reps in with that. And I bet you'll see better results. So how's all that hitting you so far?
I love the idea. I think one of my questions I had written down was coming up with a consistent call to action. Honestly, it's just been me, like while I'm editing, being like, oh crap, I need to record a little thing. And the one I did last week was specific to that episode. So I'm really flying by the seat of my pants. And I know that's phase 2 of just, you're like churning and you're spinning your wheels, and that's definitely me. So I do like the idea of creating, like that very simple tag. And I think if I shorten it to just the Battle of the Tropes, I can insert it, intro, outro, and it's not me rattling on about all these different membership tiers. Yeah.
I think you just focus in on one at a time. Since that Battle of the Tropes thing is pretty much ready to rock, I would just focus on that, make it a fun thing, get in there. And maybe you don't. Maybe the call to action is just that singular thing, but it leads them to that Buy Me a Coffee where they see a few other things. And they're like, oh, maybe I can support her in this other way too. And then try that for a month. And then if you try the VIP thing, use that as your call to action for a month. Bounce back and forth. Let's see what happens. You got nothing to lose at this point. It's just like, it's not like we're losing money by doing any of this stuff. So I think I would experiment. I would have fun with it. One other monetization idea that I don't know if you've considered this, but I would definitely would. What about like you maybe once a year, a couple times a year, putting on how to write a romance novel workshop for prospective authors and charging people premium for that? Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever done that? What are your thoughts there?
My thoughts are, I published my first book in November of last year, so it's been less than a year, and I don't feel like I'm at a level of success where I can start giving advice. I know that there's definitely things that I can say that are insightful. Like I recently had a few episodes on how I wrote a book in a month.
Yeah, I saw that one. I was like, that's what gave me the idea. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is a thing.
Yeah. But it's kind of more of like, hey, I'm a beginner, follow along with me. But I do like the idea of kind of merging that workshop with the VIP thing and maybe bringing like a few authors in, doing like a virtual panel, maybe like break down different, you know, how-tos, or if somebody's specifically I put out a little thing on my Instagram just once, but it was, are you interested in learning more about like the writing publishing process, or do you just like the books? And everybody was like, I want to know more about the writing process.
Really?
So, yeah, because
that tells you something, Summer.
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
So first off, like you have to realize, I realize like the imposter syndrome thing is real. We all feel it. Like I definitely felt that way too. Sometimes I still feel that way. I'm like, I don't make millions of dollars a year like John Lee Dumas. What am I up here? I'm not Pat Flynn, but I'm like, you know, I'm a lot further along than the person that's starting, trying to get this thing freaking figured out. Mm-hmm. And I figured out the hardest part. And I think that you have figured out the hardest part. For me, I figured out how to make consistent income and grow my show consistently and get that engagement. That was the hardest part. Mm-hmm. Now it's just leveraging that and growing all that out. Mm-hmm. So for you, you figured out how to write a book. You got one down and then you wrote another one in a month. So
it was actually my fourth one.
Okay. So you got four out and you've got one that you didn't in a month. So it's just like, I think that the hardest part in my mind, like I wrote a book back in the day for my health show. Hardest part was going like, all right, I got all these words. How do I make them make sense? Then how do I get it out there in book format? And you've done that 4 times. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you could definitely, I like your idea and I think we could build on that, but I would definitely do an experiment and just do like a little mini workshop, like a romance novel Kickstarter guide or something like that, where you're like, I'm going to do an 1.5-hour workshop and I'm just exploring this idea. If you donate $50, you'll get on the think tank session. And I'm just going to see what kind of questions you have. And I'm going to see, I might create a workshop out of this. I might not. And just explore it and invite people in, see what kind of response you get. And then maybe it turns into a 4-week boot camp down the road or a weekend workshop or whatever. But I think that's definitely worth exploring. And I fully give you permission to go after this without any imposter syndrome. Like you need to get rid of that because you're further along. That the ideal client for this is that person that is stuck, wondered how in the hell do I get these thoughts into story form and then into book form. You've done that. So does that help a little bit?
That does. And that it also reminds me of something literally just this weekend in a group chat with a bunch of my friends who are all readers. They're not writers, but I have already started thinking about the next book in the series, and I was messaging them and I was like, hey, I have this partial of an idea, and they're all messaging back and everyone gets so excited. And I think it could be another cool thing to maybe have like maybe like a free session that's like plot along with me, and then at the end of that I could pitch like, hey, do you want to learn more about like how I did this plotting and like break down more of the technical things instead of like charging people to plot my own book. But that could be a fun leeway and kind of isolate those people who are also interested in writing.
Yeah. I love your ideas. I love any idea that pulls potential listeners into the creative process. Like what we're doing now, that's what that is. Or what the ideas of you like having like kind of gamifying your content creation. I love that. I love that because then there's ownership and they're like, I'm a part of this. And that's super cool. So definitely keep going down that train track for sure. But to look back at your original idea of having those authors, if we do the backstage pass, have the authors teach a little bit, you could even do a quarterly workshop with them and go, hey, not only would I love to have you come in and teach and be our monthly spotlight, we do this quarterly how to be an author workshop. Would you be down with that? And then they get to plug their book again, and they have like a 30-minute, you can be like, what out of these different categories, whether it's the creative process, the editing process, the marketing process, whatever, or maybe you have different experts come in for each one of those and they teach, and then you do your thing. Like you have the summer special is like how I wrote a book in a month, the boot camp process or something like that. I think that would be very helpful to people that are thinking about being an author. So I would definitely consider all that mix. Is that making sense? You feel like that's potentially there?
Yeah, definitely. And a logistical sort of question. Would you give the people speaking a portion of the admission price, or is it like, hey, come in and do this just for your own promotion, but also for me to make money?
Well, okay, so here's what I would do, and I've done this a few different times. I've got a lot of clients that do this, and we never have to pay the speakers, because what we offer them is obviously that they're selling their own books. And some of them may have writing courses and stuff like that, and they can pitch that, and then you become an affiliate of theirs. Maybe it's a $5,000 thing, and you get a 20% affiliate commission, and you're like, all right, I just made a bunch of money doing that. That's awesome. So you can be an affiliate of them. They can pitch from the stage. They can sell their books. They can sell their own programs and services. And then you can set them up as an affiliate. So let's say you charge $100 for a ticket, set them up as an affiliate so that they have a little code. When their people enter that code, you're giving them 50% or more back. Because those are people that you probably wouldn't have reached ever.
Yeah.
So I tend to give more towards like 75 or 80% back. So if it's a $100 ticket, I'm giving 75 to them because they did all the work building that audience, and I get 25 bucks because I'm hosting the thing and whatever. Now those people on your email list, they're in your world, you can market to them. And this could be a really nice email list builder for you, like you mentioned earlier, as one of your goals. So they have the ability to sell from the stage. They have the ability to make affiliate commissions. They can sell their books and promote their own stuff. That should be plenty. You give me that deal on a stage that makes sense for me to talk, I'll talk for free. I'll fly in for free. I know, like, I spoke at a health conference in July. I emceed for a day, and I said, hey, can I do a workshop how to launch a health podcast? I said, I'll do it for free, and I just want to be able to sell from the stage, and you want to pay me a dime. Okay, cool. And I made way more money from that stage than I would have charging a speaker's fee. So you don't have to feel guilty about asking these people, but just provide the opportunity to say, hey, you can sell from the stage. Let's talk about what you've got, how we can position that to be very effective and make it like a real marketing opportunity for them. I think it'll be fine. That help?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Okay. I can't not say this. So I'm gonna hit you up on Instagram. I'm going to send you an account. One of my buddies from back home in Indiana, shout out to Ryan. He is a model, and he's a romance cover man model. Like I will send you, he has his like covers on his page and stuff. He's a very good looking guy. He looks like John Stamos, but like muscly,
I wonder, I probably would have like recognized him on, do you know any?
I have no idea. I have no idea. But I will send you his Instagram account. So I'm like, look, I know a romance cover guy. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Shout out to Ryan from the Iron Pit Gym in Bloomington, Indiana. So anyway, more about summer here. I want to make sure that my audience knows where to find you, where to find the show. If they want to get into your Buy Me a Coffee and kind of help you figure out some of the stuff and support your show, how is the best way to get into the world of Summer O'Toole?
Yeah, so I'm Summer O'Toole on TikTok and Instagram. So it's very simple. No dashes, no hyphens, no nothing. And the Buy Me a Coffee is buymeacoffee.com/the HEA Book Club. And then we're all on all listening platforms as the HEA Book Club as well. So very simple, very straightforward.
happily ever after, just like this podcast. I feel like we got some good ideas, and your podcasting story will be happily ever after. I'm very excited about that. Summer, I think you've had
have you been waiting this whole time to make that?
That just came to me. That sometimes the magic just happens, Summer. You know this. I really think you got a cool niche. I wholeheartedly support you, and I encourage you to go after the entrepreneurship side of things. Don't be afraid about asking people to support you, because you're providing a lot of value. So get rid of that imposter syndrome, like get it out there, get your knowledge out there, and help other people do what you do. And I think you'll get a positive response. So for all of you listening in, if you want to be just like my new pod pal Summer here and want to do a podcast audit, make sure you hop on the website, podcastingbusiness.school. You never know what's going to happen in the time between when you sign up and when you show up for the thing. You may have written a book in a month. Who knows? So get signed up. There's a bit of a waiting list, but get signed up, and that way we can get you on the calendar, and I'd love to have you on the show. All right, Summer, I appreciate you. And for all of you out there listening in podcast land, I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We will see you next time.